Hi, and welcome to your next PB&J card class. I'm Jill Foster, and today I'll be using this cute new stamp from Penny Black called Little Elf Mim. I'm going to be embossing this image, and so I'm just rubbing an anti-static bag across the paper, and I am using Copic Express It Blending cardstock. I'll ink her with VersaFine ink, and then press straight down onto that cardstock. While the ink is still wet, I'll take my clear embossing powder and sprinkle it over the image. Heat to set, and then your image will be ready to go. Now today I'm going to be using Copic markers and the Faber-Castell Art Grip Aquarelle watercolor pencils. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a very light Copic marker and then I'm matching it with a darker version of that color with a watercolor pencil. And I drew my inspiration from this crepe paper, pattern paper, and so you can see I've just matched up those colors right there. I'll begin by coloring the image with the Copic markers, and I'm only coloring with the light colors, so we're not doing any fancy shading or anything with these Copic markers. All they do is really provide the base coat for us to do our watercoloring on top of. I find it's just a lot easier to do the blending and get that nice watercolor look if you have this very light colored base coat underneath. And the Copic markers work great for this because they are waterproof. So you can put that down and add water on top and it'll be fine. So all this is right now is just very basic coloring, just putting down that light, what I call a base coat with the Copic markers. I will list the exact colors used at the end of the video, so if you just hold on at the very end, I will provide that as part of the video. Now I'm taking the watercolor pencil and I'm going to color right onto that image exactly where I want the darkest areas to be. I'm not worried about doing any blending. I'm just putting that into where I want the very darkest spot to be. And you don't need to feel like you need to color most of the area because we will go back and blend it and move that out a little bit further when we add the water. Now in the ornament here, you'll see when I color, I'm coloring very quickly. I'm not worried about if I see pencil lines or imperfections in the coloring right now, because when we add the water, these watercolor pencils just instantly turn to paint, so they blend very easily. This is just basically laying down enough pigment so that when we go to add the water, that's there and we can blend it and make it do its thing once we add the water. So it doesn't look too pretty right now, but we'll fix that. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking, this is just a cup of water, a paper towel, and then I have two paint brushes, a small and a large, and I'm mostly going to use the small. I'm just going to dip it into the water, you don't need very much, and I'm just pouncing over the area that I colored with the watercolor pencil. And as I start in the darker area and pounce that, as I move away, that color blends and fades into that lighter color of Copic that we already applied. So it's just a really fast and easy way to give yourself the look of watercolor and shading with just a few supplies And these stamps are so fun to do this with because they're just a colorer's dream, because there's so many details and different options you can do for the hat and the ornament and different colors you can coordinate together. So you see here I'm just dabbing, and it's more of a dabbing motion or a pouncing motion than a swiping the paintbrush across. Because we emboss this image, it's also easier to keep this within the lines because that embossing provides just a real subtle sort of ridge to hold that water within the area that you're coloring. Now here on the ornament I have switched to the larger brush, and I'm just blending that out. You can see where those pencil lines were, that's gone. And where it starts to meet into the Copic marker that we applied, I will start to do a little bit more of a pouncing motion and just blending that right into that light color. I've switched back now to the smaller brush to do that smaller area. And you can always go back and add more water and fiddle with it. So you can see I moved to one area, then as I was looking at the ornament, I wanted to go back and just add a little bit more water. Now I'm just coloring in the pants and the shoes. So I'm starting there with the Copic marker, putting down the light colors. Then I'll take my watercolored pencil and add it where I want the darkest areas to be. And then pouncing there where those two colors meet, and they just fade together so nicely. You could do this, since we're not using a lot of water, on your regular heavy cardstock. You could also do this on watercolor paper. I do find the smoother surface of the Copic Express It blending cardstock does absorb the water well and makes it easier to blend the two. But this technique, of course, would work on any other paper. Now I'm taking some different colors of the watercolor pencils. They're a darker version of the ones we used before, and I'm actually dipping the tip of the pencil into the water, and I'm adding that on to the very darkest areas, just a touch to really deepen that. And this small step here makes a big difference in how complete your image looks when you're finished. And by dipping the tip of that pencil into the water, it's almost like you're just painting it right onto your image. Now I've switched here to a darker red to add on this section. And if you do have an area where it looks like a real exact line like I just had there, you can just dab your finger or pounce your finger and swipe it across to blend it into the lighter colors on the section that you're coloring. So you can see there I'm just dabbing my finger on the top and blending that over into the lighter area. Now sometimes if you feel like you want to blend the area a little bit more where you've dipped the pencil into the water, you can go back with the other pencil, the original pencil that you used in that area. So it's the medium color of that section, and color just like you would with a colored pencil, just right over the top of the two colors and over the top of the Copic marker. I'm doing that right there, just to finish blending it out if you need to, or if you want to soften that transition from light to dark. Now that we have most of her colored, on a few areas here I'm just going to finish out the details using Copic markers only. So around the brim of the hat I'm just using YG91 just to feather that on, but keep most of the hat white. So I'm just feathering this in along the sides as a bit of a shadow. And then I'll take the colorless blender, number 0, and feather from the white towards the green to soften that transition from the green to the white. I'll be doing the same thing here where I color with the green and then soften the transition with the colorless blender. And also here on the end of the hat. Now for the skin, these really are not difficult to color. If you haven't tried coloring in skin or people yet, these are great to start with. I'm just using Copic marker E51 and coloring that over all the areas that are skin. Now I'm taking E31 and just adding a few shadows, and I'm just feathering and dabbing that where I want the shadows to be. And if you're not quite sure where to put your shadows on an image, try to check your packaging with your stamp, because a lot of times there's a sample colored and you can sort of see where that artist put the shadows, and if you're not sure, that's a great place to start. I'm coloring the cheeks with R20. And now I'll just go back with that E51 that I started with and just blend that out. And the lips I also colored with that same R20. Now for the hair, there's not a lot there, so I'm just coloring her hair with E35. I'm just feathering it over. And I am going on top of the lines and leaving extra room so that when I cut this out, I have more to work with. I can add a little bit of bulk there. And I went out of the lines a bit. I'm just pushing that back with the E51. Here's a look at that finished card. So I cut out the image and added it to background that was stamped with Design Spotter and some pattern paper from Crepe Paper. For more details and information, visit www.pennyblackinc.com.